Hi everybody, I'm Zilla Blitz and welcome. Today we're going to take a first look at Winter Thunder, designed by Brian Train and published by Tiny Battle Games. This Battle of the Bulge game packs a lot of punch in a small package with 176 counters and a 17 by 22 inch map. It's playable in a single evening and yet has a lot of innovative and interesting gameplay. Let's jump in and take a look. Let's do a step back moment before we dig in and look at some of the intricate details. This game is published by Tiny Battle Games in 2015. It is based on the original version, Autumn Mist by Brian Train, but a lot of streamlining and updating and modifications in this version. Tiny Battle Games is noted for producing small footprint games at affordable prices. This game comes in a plastic envelope like this. I've taken everything out for us to take a good look at. Let's start by doing kind of a big picture overall look at gameplay. And the back of the rule book here can help us out a little bit with that. So this is a two-player game. If you're going to play it solo, you'd be playing both sides. There are some rule modifications that are suggested for playing solo that has to do with the mission matrix combat system that we'll take a look at. One of the kind of innovative novelties I think that distinguishes gameplay in this Battle of the Bulge game. Gameplay over here is listed as 3 hours. However, there is a Home for Christmas scenario that reduces the game from 10 turns down to 6 turns, so probably playable more in like an hour and a half to 2 hours. But certainly either way, either you're playing the full game or the shortened version playable in an evening sitting. So again, kind of going in line with that tiny battle footprint message there. 176 counters. Hexes are 6 miles across. The game scale is each turn is 1 to 2 days. And units are mostly at the divisional level. However, there are brigades and regiments as well, so it does step down a level as well. That's kind of our big picture. Now let's jump in and take a look at our rulebook so we can say more about the complexity of the game here. So our rulebook goes to 9 pages here, and that's our first page here basically starts out right in with the rules. However, we've got some informational content here, scenario setup guide and the unit identification chart on page 9, and then optional rules here start on the back half of page 7. These are designer notes here. So really we're talking about 6.5 full pages of rules, a good bit of text, 2 columns, well organized. I read through the rules. It did take me a little while to get through kind of the combat because the combat is kind of new to me. So it did take me a while to kind of wrap my head around it. It wasn't difficult. It just was, I just didn't read through and get it. You know, I was thinking, okay, this is going to be a game. I'm going to read through and I'm going to get the rules. And I had to stop for a second and say, wait a second, this is different. I haven't really seen something quite like this before. I think it's a really cool system. We'll talk about it a little bit more as we look at the game in general. I'm going to give this game, if I had to rate it on a complexity scale, I'm going to go about a 3.5 out of 10. One reason is I think the rules are good. Rules are very clear. I got through the whole thing. I didn't have any issues. So no problem with the clarity of the rules, the writing, or the organization of the rules. It seems like it's a very straightforward system. And again, there just aren't that many of them if you're a wargamer. I mean, there's not too many graphics. We got a little bit. 7 pages of rules. It probably took me about a half an hour, maybe 45 minutes, because I did read this section a couple of times. But I would probably go 3.5 out of 10 in terms of complexity. The only part that really slowed me down a little bit was that kind of reading through the combat and wrapping my head around that. So we'll come back and talk a little bit about some of the mechanics later because I want to kind of highlight those a little bit. Let's go from our rules. Let's jump right into our 2 counter sheets. 176 counters in all. We have both German and US units on both sides here. I'll show some close-ups as we go through these. These are all printed on 2 sides. There is a step system for divisional units. For brigades, there are a few brigades and regiments. They do not have a step system, so they are single hit units, if you would. But the majority of units here are divisions, and so you're going to have a step loss system for them. If we take a look at one of the counters, just to get an idea for some of the factors that are involved in play, if we look at one of these US counters, the US are green, basic German units are gray, SS units are purple. We have British units in that do have some restrictions on movement depending upon German actions. These are in the tan. Paratroopers are in blue for the Germans as well. So those are our combat forces here. Now, if we do take a look at one of the units, say for example, this 3rd US Armored Division here. Left side are your combat factors, both offense and defense. E stands for elite unit. There are elite units, then there are regular units that have no designation, and then a few units units have a P, which is a poor, inexperienced level. Those add die roll modifiers to combat, and basically, of course, the elite works to your advantage and poor works against it. Movement is on the right-hand side, which is a 6 here for the armored unit. So relatively straightforward. We flip it over, we can see that there's stripes to designate the reduced, the step loss side and things like that. I also want to call attention to, there's a command and control, command system within it. So there is a chit pull system. Probably looking at the units, this is a good time to talk about this. Each turn starts with kind of basically 3 phases. There's an initial phase that has some housekeeping and some reinforcements. Then there's the operations phase where you're going to take, there are headquarter units that are on the map, and then you're going to have a connected chit to every headquarter that's on the map. All of those chits go into a cup. You're going to pull the chit out of the cup and be able to activate units that are within the command range of that headquarters. So there's going to be kind of a back and forth kind of motion between the sides depending on when the chits are pulled and things like that, going back and forth. So as we look at the units here, for example, we can see on the left side here this active headquarters. These are the chits for the US headquarters, and there should be a corresponding headquarter counter right here for the US there. Headquarters are corps as well as army headquarters, and there are some nuances to how they can act depending upon what chit gets pulled. But again, we're looking at a relatively modest 176 counters, relatively modest counter set. I'm going to call our attention down here to some of these, the mission matrix counters that we'll come back to later. These look really cool. And we can also talk a little bit, let's save some of the mechanics for a little bit later, but there's our counter set right there. We have one counter ready to go. We have a very simple player aid. This is some promotional material for other games from Tiny Battle Games. This basically, the simple player aid is our turn track, which again has the 10 turns starting in the 16th of December. Each turn is 2 days, and it goes down through the 2nd to 3rd of January. We do have weather that's built into the game here as well, and then these are the reinforcement tracks on the right-hand side. There are some special rules in play for the first turn to give the Germans kind of that edge of surprise as well. So that is our player aid. We get one of them here, and then here is our map. The map is 17 by 22 across, and the hexes themselves are 13/16 of an inch across. Counters, by the way, are 5/8 of an inch, so relatively big. Now this is a 17 by 22 inch map. We can see, it's again, small footprint, even on the 17 by 22 inch paper here that it sits on. It's kind of a glossy paper. The map itself doesn't take up the whole area. So we get the east side here. One thing I really like about the map, as always, I am so grateful when there's consideration for setup for play. So we can see all of the units that start the game on the map have their unit designations right in place. So it's going to make setup so much smoother to be able to do that. We have Bastogne here and the Meuse River up here to the northwest. So the German forces coming from this way, moving, of course, from the east to the west in this battle. Now, a lot of the combat information is down here on the bottom. We have the terrain effects chart, the movement chart, and then we have the mission matrix table. Now, I want to quickly just highlight some of the mechanics that I noted as I was reading the rule that's going to give you some ideas on some of the novelty here. First, there are no zone of controls in this game, so you'll be able to kind of slide by units. However, that doesn't mean it's going to be easy to work your way through. One of the characteristics about this game, in terms of we have rough terrain and then forested terrain, motorized units can't move into forest terrain and they can't attack into forest terrain unless they are going along a roadway. So that means you're going to have to use your infantry to take care of some of the tricky places in terms of the defensive positions there. At least that's how I anticipate it would play out. There are some set improved positions for the Germans along the west wall. They only benefit the Germans. These are designated by these higher hexes here as well. Now, there is command, as we mentioned, that's based on headquarters that are going to be on the map, and you're going to be activating units within a certain tactical movement range to be able to do various things when their activation comes on. Also, if we look here, we can see exploitation counters. This basically, when you have a headquarters, you're going to be designated, you're going to be moving your units for tactical movement and strategic movement, and then you're going to execute your attacks then. Then any unit you've tagged for that basically phase of your command unit, any unit you've tagged with an exploit, and it has to be an armored unit in that stack, is able to move and attack after that first round of movement and attacking. So you're going to be basically leaving your armor behind. Hopefully you can blow a hole, and then you get almost like a second wave that you can use your armor to punch a hole through the enemy lines. So that gets kind of that kind of blitzkrieg element in the German armor that's trying to punch through the US and Allied lines. There's also improved positions. You can build these, and these can be set up in place. There's a few American units that start the game with improved positions. There strategic movement as well. So if a unit doesn't move next to an enemy unit, stays on roads, it can kind of move strategically across the board at a much faster rate. And those movement points, of course, can help you move units quickly from one place to another in the game. Lastly, there's also a supply system in the game. There are dice roll modifiers if you have a unit that is out of supply in attack, and there is a unique roadblock system. I believe these are on the, here we have roadblock counters that are on the back. US can put roadblocks in the way of German forces that have to be cleared in order for them to be able to advance. And those are all kind of the basic family, if you would, of mechanics that are apparent in the game. I want to spend a few minutes, however, highlighting this mission matrix table and the mission matrix combat system, because I think that is one of the unique aspects of this game. So we can see here 10 counters, 6 blue and 4 red, and we can see a mission matrix table here. Basically what happens, this is almost like a rock, paper, scissors type of combat system. The attacker is going to pick from one of these 4 types of attacks: frontal attack, infiltration, blitz, or balanced attack. You can only pick blitz if you have armor involved. The defender is going to pick one of these 6 defensive options, things like delay, stand fast, or withdraw. Then you cross-reference these on this mission matrix table. The attacking ones are on the top, the defensive ones go down on the left, and that gives you a box with 4 results in it: 2 red, 2 blue, 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom. The red ones refer to the attacker, the blue ones refer to the defender. The top results, if there's a number in there like a 0 or a +1, that means that the attacker or the defender, whichever the case may be, red or blue, has to make a casualty check to see if there's a step loss. The bottom numbers refer to the results of the surviving units. If it's red, A1 means advance 1, blue means retreat 1. So here, if there's a balanced attack against a balanced defense, the attacker gets to advance one square, the defender must retreat 1 square after that attack. Casualty checks work with a combination of the combat factors of the unit, the terrain, as well as the number that's generated here. Pluses are bad, so the bigger the number, that raises the number you have to clear. So for example, after comparing the combat factors and the terrain, you might have to make a casualty check at a 7, for example. That means you have to roll, you pick one of your units and you have to roll greater than a 7 in order not to suffer a step loss. So the combat system works like that with that 10-sided die, which is not provided within the game, but it's basically this kind of rock, paper, scissors type of element where you're going to be picking what types of attack you've got and what types of defense you're going to put up that's going to generate the combat. So this looks like this is quite novel. I've seen things like this in other games, but I haven't seen it in this type of World War II hex encounters game. So it looks like a really fun system to try and play. One last thing I almost forgot. Solitaire. There is no solitaire bot for this. You would be playing both sides and kind of making your best moves for both sides. You might be wondering how this combat matrix would work, because you're going to be picking an attacker and a defender, and it's kind of a rock, paper, scissors. The rulebook mentions a modification to gameplay for this, which is where you pick the attacking chit and then you randomly determine the defender's chit. That's a suggested modification for playing solo when you're playing both sides. I'm not sure how that would work. Overall, I guess with that in mind, I would probably give this a 5 or a 5.5 out of 10 for Solitaire. So I think there's nothing really that's going to break the game. The only question is how you're going to be making these modifications for the mission matrix system. I also like the fact that, again, that this is a small footprint game. I think this would be a fun game to play in a single evening. I could even see playing the Home by Christmas scenario, that shorter 6-turn variant, if you want to play like an hour and a half after you've already played a longer game. So this looks like a lot of fun. I look forward to getting it to the table. Winter Thunder, designed by Brian Train, 2015 game from Tiny Battle Games. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great day.